We are on the record for ERD case number CR 2018-005553. The complainant is Pamela McMurray. The respondent is ProHealth Care9. I'm Administrative Law Judge Stephanie Brown. It is Wednesday, July 28th, 2021 at approximately 9:05 a.m. We're here for the second day of the hearing involving those two parties. We have our first witness appearing as well. Before we get into her testimony, though, again, just for the record, if the parties could state their appearances, please.
The complainant, Pamela McMurray, appears with attorney Victor Plantinga by WebEx. Good morning.
Good morning. And for the respondent.
Respondent, ProHealth Care Incorporated, appearing by attorney Sam Mitchell with Jessica Zurcher.
All right. Before we begin with Ms. Zurcher's testimony, is there anything that either attorney Plantinga or attorney Mitchell you needed or wanted to discuss?
No.
All right. So I believe that like we did yesterday, Attorney Mitchell is going to start with the questioning of the witness. And then Attorney Plantinga will ask the cross-examination. Is that correct? That's still the process?
Yes.
All right. So Ms. Zurcher, before we begin with the attorneys asking you questions, if you could raise your right hand, I need to swear you in. Do you solemnly, sincerely, and truly declare and affirm that the testimony you will give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
All right. You can put your hand down. And then again, just for the record, could you state your name and spell it for us, please?
Jessica Zurcher, Jessica Zuercher.
All right. Attorney Mitchell, you can go ahead with your direct examination of the witness.
Thank you, Judge, and good morning, Ms. Zurcher. Let's begin by asking, who is your current employer?
ProHealth Care.
When did you start your employment with ProHealth Care?
April 24th, 2017.
And what is your current position?
Director, Continuum of Care.
And what was your position in 2017 when you started with ProHealth Care?
Director, Neuroscience, Interventional Pain, GI Outpatient Department, and Neuropsychology.
Can you describe the responsibilities of each position and if there are any differences?
Sure. So each department was we'll just say a revenue generating department. So saw patients in some capacity and had a physician structure. Neuroscience is quite large. Neuropsychology was integrated in that for a couple of our programs like TBI. Let's see. Yeah, probably all told maybe 100 or so reports in the whole structure. It's just a very busy area. We were recruiting neuroscience or neurologists and neurosurgeons. So just a really busy time.
Okay. And so in April 2017, how many sections, departments, and reports did you have?
So we had neuroscience had 2 locations where they saw patients, same as for interventional pain, outpatient departments, and GI. So those 4 had double sites, right, at our 2 hospitals. And then the neuropsychology department in comparison was much smaller. And direct reports would be, I had managers in place. So direct reports was probably closer to maybe 20. And then the whole structure well over 100.
Okay. And to whom did you report when you started your position as director in April 2017?
Julie Jackson.
And what was Julie Jackson's position at the time?
Vice president.
Vice president of what?
Of all of those areas, plus inpatient and outpatient therapies.
Okay. Was Julie Jackson previously the director, the position that you took over in April 2017?
Yes.
Okay. Did you report to Julie Jackson for all of the 2017 year?
Yes.
Okay. Can you describe your post-high school education, please?
I have a bachelor's in nursing, an MS in nursing, and an MBA.
Okay. Do you have any expertise in clinical psychology or neuropsychology?
No, I do not.
When you started at ProHealth Care, Ms. Richard, did you sit down with Julie Jackson at any time to learn more about the departments that you'd be directing?
She provided an overview. The kind of general course was to connect with those teams and to begin meeting with those groups, especially the physicians and providers.
Okay. During those touch bases or your meetings, early meetings in April, did you discuss any specific doctors in the sections that you directed?
No, the focus was more on getting to the departments and the areas where she had concerns, like if there were volume concerns or reimbursement concerns. We had a locums issue with our neuro hospitalist. It was more issues that I needed to address.
Okay. Did Julie Jackson discuss Pam McMurray with you during any of your first touch base meetings, introductory meetings to your sections?
No, not that I recall.
So by extension, did Julie Jackson tell you anything about Dr. McMurray's history with Dr. Evan Schwartz or anybody else at ProHealth Care during those meetings?
No, definitely not early on. No.
And I should add for the record, do you know Dr. Evan Schwartz?
I do.
And who is Dr. Evan Schwartz and what was his position in 2017?
Dr. Schwartz was the clinical director for the group. That was his role. And he saw patients, obviously. He also functioned in our TBI clinic and senior health, which were some other collaborations with the neuropsych department and behavioral medicine.
Okay. Did Julie ever share any history predating your employment strike that. Did Julie Jackson ever share with you any history between Doctors McMurray and Schwartz predating your employment at ProHealth Care in April 2017?
No. I'll just say that Julie was really excited to take the VP position. She was promoted. She waited for me. I was part of an organization that was sunsetting and had to see out a commitment. She would have liked me to have started at least a month earlier. So when I got there, it was hit the ground running.
Okay. In those first meetings, did Julie Jackson ever tell you about any alleged complaints against Dr. Schwartz regarding his clinical competency?
No.
From Dr. McMurray or any other ProHealth Care employee?
No.
When did you first meet Dr. McMurray?
I don't recall exactly, but it probably would have been within the first month of my employment as I made rounds, and it might not have been a substantial one-on-one discussion, but I would have attended their monthly meeting.
And you said rounds. What are rounds?
So at ProHealth Care, leadership is expected to round depending on their level. So directors are supposed to round 8 times a month on your different areas. Obviously, if you have 9 different locations, you're not getting to all those every week. So it's kind of you just kind of get to your areas. It's checking to see, do they have everything they need from an operational perspective, technology's working, they're not, having any issues, safety concerns is always a key question. So it's just an opportunity to meet staff in their setting where they're working and identify any concerns and address them promptly.
Were all of your sections, divisions where you were rounding, were they located at the same site?
No.
Where was the neuropsychology section located relative to where your main office working space was in that time?
We were on the same campus. So my office was in the hospital, up on the 4th floor at the time. And then neuropsychology is in our professional office building. So it's a building that's connected to the hospital.
Okay. Did you perform a round of the neuropsych section weekly?
No.
Okay. So I'm going to, well, first I'll ask you, Ms. Zurcher, approximately how often then did you see Dr. McMurray in your work day?
So when I rounded, just because of the nature of rounding and that you're meeting employees or staff where they're working, they might not always be available. So some people are in a room with a patient already or family, or are busy doing something else. But so that was an opportunity monthly, at least. And then the monthly staff meeting. And
when you're on your rounds and you're meeting with individual clinicians, are those typically one-on-one meetings? Or
there were some of those. They were usually shorter. I believe there was a point where I tried to kind of let them know when I was going to be rounding and tried to schedule that in, but it doesn't always work that way.
Okay. Judge, if you could show the witness respondent exhibit number 10, please. According to my post-it note, I think we moved this into the record yesterday.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so this is exhibit 10. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay.
Excuse me, cough. Ms. Zurcher, do you recognize this document?
I do, yes.
Can you explain what we're looking at, what this document is?
This is the FY17 performance evaluation. It covers the period of October 1st through September 30th. However, these have to be done by August 31st, and they're released to us in July. So depending on the number of reports, so that you have adequate time to get that complete.
And by FY, you mean fiscal year?
Yes.
Okay.
So starting in October.
Okay. And did you complete this performance evaluation, this fiscal year 17?
I did.
Did Julie Jackson provide any information to you in completing Dr. McMurray's fiscal year performance evaluation?
No.
We're completing performance evaluations for clinicians in all of your sections, including neuropsychology. Was that your responsibility, your sole responsibility?
It was my response. All of my direct reports were my responsibility, yes.
Okay. How many other fiscal year 17 performance evaluations did you complete approximately, along with Dr. McMurray's?
Total probably about 20 or so.
And those were across various departments?
Yes.
And do you recall when you started writing Dr. McMurray's performance evaluation?
I started them in July. I usually take a vacation in August. So as soon as they're released, and I continue to do this, I start them right away.
Procrastination is not in your lexicon, it would seem. So you started your performance evaluations in fiscal year 17 and in July, you said, and you started with ProHealth Care in April 2017, correct?
Correct. April 24th.
Okay. How well did you feel you knew Dr. McMurray when you wrote her performance evaluation?
I didn't feel I knew hardly any of my team members very well to do that, but our neuropsychology physician providers, especially because I just didn't have the one-on-one contact. At least with my managers, I had more frequent contact, but with that team, there wasn't a lot of contact. So I went on. Dr. Schwartz would provide some information, a paragraph about what he saw as positive attributes. And so I used that to weave that in, and then looked at it as a forward-looking document to help build our relationship.
Okay. Can you explain just in general terms the performance evaluation process?
Sure. So the employee, when it opens up, the employee is able to go in and do a self-eval, which we did request staff do. And then that's also weaved in. I use staff's comments as well to highlight work. And then I do my piece, and then we come together in a one-on-one meeting. We walk through it. Then I send it to the employee for signature. They send it back for my signature, and then it's filed. I did want to note that in this document, it does appear to only have my comments, I think. And so I don't know if I saw the employee's comments in here also.
Would Dr. McMurray have completed a self-assessment?
Yes.
Okay. And you referred to staff comments. Are you referring to
First
self-assessments?
Yes.
Okay. And you also noted that Dr. Schwartz provided a paragraph on clinical observations?
Yes.
Okay.
And for Pam, he did comment and that she worked well with patients, and that was a positive.
Okay. One of these ratings, if we could scroll to section 1, Judge, the universal expectations right there at the top. Well, I think is right where we need to be. One of these sections is a rating for universal expectations, correct?
Yep.
And Dr. McMurray, you rated Dr. McMurray as she met these universal expectations, correct?
Yes.
What is the rating system for universal expectations, and what does met mean?
So this is a floor, if you will. Employees would not be eligible for any additional bonuses or increases if they're unmet. So these are our clinical-based learnings. It's your licensing, any credentialing that you have, that you're meeting those universal kind of floor expectations of your position.
Okay, so is it less about job performance and more just about the covering the basics of what you need to practice in the
That's
clinic?
correct.
We could scroll down to role responsibilities. Which I think might that be section 2, or is that?
I thought it was up at closer to the top.
I think it's section 2. Yeah, there we go. So how did you assess role responsibilities in this performance evaluation?
Let's see. And I'll just add that our system has changed since this. So this is familiar, but not what we're using in current state.
With respect to this performance evaluation.
Yep. So this is about the technical skills. So this would have more or less come from Evan. Not that he's rating it, but he would have been able to evaluate the technical skills. So highly valued, and I don't have his paragraph in front of me, but probably seeing Pam's rating of outstanding, Evan commenting that she worked well with families. I was comfortable with a highly valued rating at the time.
Okay, why did you seek Dr. Schwartz's input on this area instead of just fill it out yourself?
So I'm not qualified to, to assess their clinical skills, and that's why he's the clinical director. He was the clinical director.
Okay, so other than Dr. Schwartz's clinical contributions, is the rest of this assessment based on your personal observations to the extent that they were, and Dr. McMurray's self-evaluation?
Yes, that's correct. And with a really forward, you'll note in my comments are very forward looking. I'm going to need your support for that kind of thing. I'll say that I didn't have any idea of the things that had occurred. I still don't know all of them. And so at the time, I just saw this as I did with any of the other clinicians, as an opportunity to build relationships.
Okay, so for example, the adaptability and change section, how do you characterize your leader comments, which I think are on the next page, Judge?
So again, this appears to be, I mean, I can't comment. I wasn't able to comment on it specifically, what I knew of her. So I looked to the future, knowing that she had tenure in the department. It made sense to me at the time that she would be someone I could look to help continue to move the department forward. And especially as you can see, we're bringing on pediatric neuropsychologist, a second one, and that was pretty exciting.
So would you say that your comments in this section and your other leader comments in this performance evaluation are more based on your projected expectations for Dr. McMurray or your personal observations to date of Dr. McMurray?
I would say that's a combination.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for example, I will also look to you to keep an open mind when looking at problems and it's actually hard to read.
I think it's just problems and situations and accepting and building off of the ideas of others.
Right. So I couldn't say that I had seen that, but it was what I was wanting to see. Okay.
So understanding that the universal expectation section was either met or unmet.
Correct.
Can you explain the rating categories ProHealth Care used at this time for these other categories?
Yes. Outstanding, highly valued, I still don't remember, unmet maybe, or needs improvement.
All right, and you drafted this performance evaluation in July 2017, correct?
Correct.
Did you have an in-person meeting with Dr. McMurray to review, just to discuss this review?
In August.
Okay. After writing this evaluation in July 2017. Did you observe anything concerning Dr. McMurray's behavior, which in hindsight would have led you to change your assessments on this performance evaluation?
Yes. So the meeting with her to review this occurred 2 days after a meeting where at the time it didn't seem as big of a deal, or it seemed to be, it was one of those tuck it away and kind of wait and see, is this something that comes up again? But we had a meeting that with the occupational therapy department in which Dr. McMurray was not being a team member. She was rolling her eyes, and she did save her questions for last, but then fired them in rapid succession. And just, it was an uncomfortable meeting, but we have a just culture. At the time, it was kind of a, what did I just see? Okay, maybe it's not, in a just culture, a reason to change everything.
Was there anything else? Was there any other meetings?
In which I
that you attended with Dr. McMurray that might have had an impact on how you scored her on her performance evaluation?
Sure. So that the coding meeting that we had in October, that would have been in our new fiscal year. But by then, the pattern had started to become more and more clear.
Would you, with the benefit of hindsight and not knowing Dr. McMurray all that well as you testified when you wrote this performance evaluation, would your observations at those two meetings, the August OT meeting and the October coding meeting, would that have impacted your grading of Dr. McMurray in any of these sections on her performance evaluation?
Yes, I believe so, and specifically the teamwork section.
How would it have impacted the teamwork section?
I would have downgraded it, and maybe would have looked for more information to support that, to see where that should have landed. If somebody's under, so if they're in the needs improvement, that's a whole different issue. It's a pretty big deal. It requires you to do a performance improvement plan, work with HR. So it's a pretty big move. I don't know that I would have gone there at that point in October, certainly. But just based off that one meeting, probably not, but looked to valued rather than highly valued in that section.
Okay. So you make reference to this August OT meeting. What, do you know the date of that, or?
I believe it was August 7th, and I think the review was done on the 9th, if I have those dates right.
And can you describe what this OT meeting was all about?
Sure. The occupational therapy team was really excited to share they had a new program they were implementing, Drive Able. This provides an objective way to test patients that are maybe experiencing some decline to see if they should still be driving, and it kind of takes that the subjective part of it out for the primary care providers and other team members.
And you mentioned that Dr. McMurray displayed behaviors that you took notice of. Can you provide more detail about those behaviors and how they made you feel?
Sure. So it's sort of when somebody's talking and the person receiving the information is is questioning it. And so she kind of, sighing after people make statements, kind of moving about in your chair. And then again, she did save her questions for the end, but then they came in kind of a rapid succession. It seemed that her concern was that they were doing something that maybe she didn't think was appropriate or at their skill. And so she was making sure they weren't diagnosing. It just didn't feel collaborative. It felt more like not, the team came in very excited about this. This is a huge, resource for our patients and families, and to be met with kind of, should you be doing this? Just didn't feel like teamwork.
So if you were to summarize your observations of Dr. McMurray's behavior, how would you describe those behaviors?
Kind of hostile, unfriendly.
In your view, and based on your observations of others at that meeting, did anybody else at that meeting display comparative or comparable behaviors?
No.
So you said that you met with Dr. McMurray on the 9th, August 9th, to provide her the performance evaluation, and that this meeting, OT meeting, took place on the 7th of August, correct?
Yes.
Was there any reason why you didn't change or amend Dr. McMurray's performance evaluation after the August 7th OT meeting and before you met with her on the 9th?
I didn't understand the gravity of what I had experienced. And again, in a just culture, it was a one-time thing. So, is this how this person always is? Maybe they had an off day. So some benefit of the doubt. And then if I'm completely transparent, it's, I was running at 1,000 miles a minute, and I think it, in hindsight, I probably should have taken the time to do that, or at least explore that, but chose not to.
So you said that you didn't understand the gravity of what you witnessed. Does that bear in your view on the significance of Dr. McMurray's behavior at the August 7th OT meeting?
Yes, and again, it built over time, and I wasn't privy to the other information, so it certainly wasn't anything that was on my radar. I am a assume positive intent kind of person. It's just easier that way. So yeah, I didn't understand the gravity at the time.
Okay. And you testified that you observed Dr. McMurray, or you took note of certain behaviors at another meeting involving coding. It was a coding meeting in October. When did this coding meeting take place, and who was present for the meeting?
Coding meeting was October 24th. So there were some members of the coding team that were there, including Neva Schwartz. I don't recall if they attended or not, but I've noted on the old invite that Kim Bishel was invited, and then all of our neuropsychology clinicians were there, unless they were on PTO or something like that. They all would have been present.
Okay. And Neva Schwartz what was her role again in 2017?
A coder. And she's in I don't know if she's a lead role or it's not I don't think she's a supervisor. I think she's in some type of lead role.
What was the purpose of Neva Schwartz attending the meeting on October 24th?
There were some coding issues that we needed to go through. And when Neva tried to work through this on her own, it didn't go very well. She felt intimidated and bullied by Dr. Murray, I found out later. And so prefer to do this in a larger group and to address everybody. Although in hindsight, I believe that not everybody was experiencing the coding issues, but she wanted everybody there to hear the same message.
So was Neva's appearance at the meeting, that staff meeting, part of the agenda that was set for the meeting?
It was the only reason we were meeting. It wasn't part, it might have been a, originally a psych meeting, but it was, the focus was coding.
Okay. And what did you observe or hear at that October 24th coding meeting that caused you concern?
So again, this is, so same behaviors, you know, huffing, sighing, rolling eyes, shifting in her seat, that kind of thing. Questioning, you know, I think the coding team, well, I know that the coding team works off of CMS guidelines, so they, you know, they don't make up the guidelines. So there's this real sense of, I'm only telling her what CMS has. Why does she have to push back or argue with me? Nobody else does that. It just became, it was an uncomfortable meeting. Neva was concerned about it to have the meeting to begin with, and then it went as she had thought it would, where she was met with this kind of hostile behavior.
Okay, so are you saying that you spoke to Neva Schwartz before the coding meeting started about Dr. McMurray?
I did. When we scheduled the meeting, she pushed back on it and initially didn't want to. And so, yes, we discussed that, and then it came out why she was concerned. Yeah.
Okay.
It's really hard to remember all of this, and some of it, like that particular piece, I apologize. I didn't recollect that during the deposition, but yeah.
So how did Dr. McMurray's behaviors during the coding meeting towards Neva, how did those behaviors make you feel as the director?
For me, it's a not under my watch kind of thing. Like bullying is just not okay, or to not be collaborative, open. You know, we all have to work together and spend so much time with each other. It's so important that we treat each other with respect, regardless of our roles. And so for me, you know, I've worked in underserved communities a large portion of my career, so everybody counts. And it's just something that I don't tolerate. And when I took it to Julie Jackson, she's passionate about having a productive environment and a safe environment for staff, because that's, you know, mistakes happen, and it's so important.
Okay, so after the coding meeting, directly after, soon after, did you talk to Neva Schwartz about the meeting and what happened at the meeting?
Yes, I followed her out. She was visibly upset. I followed her out and walked with her, you know, to get to the hospital section where she was, and just walked with her and talked with her.
And what did Ms. Schwartz tell you?
Just that the meeting went, that's exactly how she thought it would go. And it was kind of a, you see, this is what I meant.
Okay. And you mentioned just now that you brought concerns about Dr. McMurray's behavior towards Ms. Schwartz at the coding meeting to Julie Jackson's attention. Is that right?
Yeah.
And when did he do that?
I don't recall exactly if it was, you know, that same day or right after. I believe it was pretty close proximity to the meeting.
Was it an in-person meeting between the two of you?
We did have an in-person meeting, on the 27th, maybe? I think that Friday.
Okay. So is this an accurate sequence of events based on your testimony that you spoke with Ms. Schwartz before the coding meeting? The coding meeting took place. You noticed whatever you observed regarding Dr. McMurray at the meeting. You spoke to Ms. Schwartz after the meeting, close in proximity to the meeting ending, and then you brought your concerns to Julie Jackson.
Yes. Yeah.
How did if at all, did the October 24th meeting put the August 7th OT meeting into perspective for you, different perspective?
It did, and I probably did after Neva pushed back initially, but certainly after that meeting, it became more clear. There was also another email, and I don't recall what time frame that was sent, where the psychometrician Beth, there was concern about her timeliness with her reporting out, and Dr. McMurray had sent an email to the other providers, and then Dr. Schwartz escalated and sent it back to Julie and I, but he didn't want anybody to know that he had sent it. It just seemed weird. He didn't want anybody to know that he sent it to us. Just keep it between us. And it just seemed like he wasn't able to, I don't like, he should have been able to just say, let's address this. Let's have a meeting. Let's discuss this. It was strange to me that he had to, blindly send it to us or whatever.
And why was that strange to you?
Because as the clinical director, he should have been able to just, address the issue and feel that he can, because let me say this. So in Pam's email, she told him, let's keep it between us. And then he shared it with Julie and I, noting that, I'm sharing it with you, but I'm not going to say anything. It's like, Evan, you're the clinical director. You should be able to tell her I'm sharing this and we're going to address this issue. But that's when it started to become, more clear that there was something going on there as well.
And do you attribute that Dr. Schwartz had reticence to address that concern to something going on with Dr. McMurray?
Right.
Okay. Judge, can we show the witness respondent exhibit 27, please?
Can you see that okay?
Yes.
Is this the email that you're referencing that Dr. Schwartz forwarded to you?
Yes.
All right, Judge, I'd like to move to enter respondent exhibit 27 into the record.
Any objections?
No objection.
All right, so R27 is received.
May I ask a question?
What is it?
I'm just wondering if this also shows the full email of where Evan sent it to Julie and I.
It's a whole
It looks
page,
like
it
this
looks
is,
like.
looks like this is the only part of that.
I believe this is the email that Evan received, but then there's another piece of it where he forwards it on to Julie and I. I'm just pointing that out.
Okay. So you said that you went to Julie Jackson with your concerns. Can you describe what happened at that meeting with Julie Jackson and what exactly what you told her?
I shared with her about the coding meeting. I shared with her, she had asked me if there were other instances. I shared with her about the Drive Able meeting. She was very concerned. And she, at that point, shared with me, I think at some point she had shared that there had been I know she had shared at some point that there had been a change in leadership. I didn't put a whole lot of anything into it. It just was, and again, assume positive intent, keep moving. But then at that time, after I shared this, I believe is when she shared that there had been some more that she really wasn't happy that Evan had taken that on and that there had been a complaint to med staff. She didn't go into detail, only that med staff didn't have any findings. But she didn't, share a lot of detail about that.
So how would you characterize Julie's overall reaction to your reports about Dr. McMurray's behavior?
Unsurprised.
Okay.
She also seemed to be protective over me and indicated that that this was an issue she needed to address, and that she wasn't going to have me involved.
So at this meeting, Julie Jackson first told you about there being some sort of peer review request made by Dr. McMurray concerning Dr. Schwartz, right?
Yes.
And if I understand your testimony, was, in your view, was Ms. Jackson trying to keep you at arm's length? Was she trying, from that information, was she trying to keep you away from it?
Yes. Yeah. I believe so.
And did Julie ask your opinion about your observations of Dr. McMurray's behavior at those August 7th and August 24th meetings?
I don't know if it was at that meeting or if it was at a later communication, but she did eventually, and before Dr. McMurray was terminated, and she asked me if I agreed, and I told her that yes, I did. I thought that morale in the department would improve.
Did you ever discuss any other complaints that Dr. McMurray may or may not have brought against Dr. Schwartz in the past concerning his clinical competency?
No, she mentioned there was the med staff review. She didn't go into details exactly what it was, only that it was unfounded or that med staff didn't have any findings.
In your interpretation, did she volunteer that information to sway your opinion at all of what you had observed at those meetings?
No.
Judge, I'm going to object. I understand it's, her opinion, but it is speculation. There's nothing in the record that would indicate that any opinion she has about what Julie Jackson intended is supported.
I'll let her answer the question. Go ahead.
Can you repeat the question? I apologize.
No, we can strike it. Did you agree with the decision to terminate Dr. McMurray?
Yes.
And what was your understanding of the reasons why ProHealth Care terminated Dr. McMurray?
That she was a bully, that she had created a hostile working environment. I wasn't privy to the actual documents. I'll say that, so I don't know what was actually said. That's my understanding.
Judge, if you could show the respondent, excuse me, the witness respondent exhibit 15.
Okay, there's exhibit 15.
Ms. Zurcher, are you familiar with this email string?
I am. Yes.
Understanding that you are not a party to this email string, is your recollection of the October 24th coding meeting consistent with how Eva Schwartz describes the meeting in this email to Julie Jackson?
Absolutely, yes.
I believe you've already entered this into the record, Judge, correct?
It's already in there.
Okay. If we could show the excuse me, yeah. If you could show the witness respondent exhibit 16, please.
This is 16.
Ms. Zurcher, this is an email that you sent to Julie Jackson on October 27th, subject August 7th, NPsych meeting, NPsych being neuropsych, correct?
Yes.
Are you familiar with this email?
Yes. So after I had alerted Julie to the concerns in the coding meeting that occurred on the 24th, when she had asked me if I had seen other instances and I had shared this with her, she asked me to memorialize it and put it in writing.
Did you first verbally discuss your observations of Dr. McMurray's behaviors at this August 7th meeting and that October 24th meeting? Did you first verbally discuss those observations with Julie Jackson prior to writing this email?
Yes. Yeah. Yes, we had discussion about the coding meeting, and she asked me if I'd ever seen anything like that before, and I said yes. And she said, okay, please put that in writing. Again, it didn't seem significant at the time, but as time came on, it was more significant.
Okay. Is the content of this email consistent with your own observations of Dr. McMurray's behaviors at the August 7th OT meeting?
Yes. Yeah.
In your view, did Julie Jackson ever exert any influence on you? Any influence on the opinion that you wrote in this email?
No. And I request that of my team when they come to me with an issue. It's get more information or put it in writing. That's a typical request.
So it's your habit to have people memorialize in writing observations that might be relevant to an issue, whatever it is.
Yes.
And that was your understanding of what Julie Jackson was asking of you?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it absolutely wasn't she didn't, these aren't her words. These are my experience. Her only request was that I put my experience in writing.
Okay. And I believe, Judge, that this exhibit's also in the record?
Yes.
Thank you. Did Pam McMurray, Dr. McMurray, did she ever approach you with any concerns or complaints about Dr. Schwartz's clinical competency or quality of care? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
No.
Okay, thank you. Did anybody else at ProHealth Care ever approach you with any concerns or complaints about Dr. Schwartz's clinical competency or quality of patient care?
No.
And can you state again your understanding of why ProHealth Care terminated Dr. McMurray?
A hostile working environment.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Zurcher. That's all I have for you.
All right, Attorney Plantinga, you can go ahead with your cross.
Ms. Zurcher, Prior to starting at ProHealth Care, you had worked in healthcare previously, right?
Yes.
I believe something around 5 years in accountable care organizations, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. I don't know if you were just nodding or shaking your head. I didn't. Okay, I got it. And that would be working across many health systems simultaneously, correct?
Yes.
And in your prior role, you worked with teams of physicians, correct?
Yes.
And before that, you were a director of nursing, correct?
Yes.
In roughly 3.5 years in that role.
Yes.
Now you replaced Julie Jackson when you came to ProHealth Care, right?
Yes.
And you assumed her role, or title, I should say, director of neuroscience?
Neuroscience, neuropsychology, stroke, interventional pain, GI, and outpatient departments. And then Julie still had inpatient and outpatient therapies.
Okay. And in that role as a director of neuroscience, as a director, let's just put it that way, you had the ability to discipline, right?
Yeah, to address, sure, yes, that's not
Okay.
the word I would use. But
All right. You had the ability to take action to address
yes,
misconduct or behaviors that you found did not advance the goals of right?
yes,
Now, when you started at ProHealth Care, you had regular meetings with Julie Jackson.
yes.
Yes. You also had scheduled monthly meetings with Julie Jackson.
I didn't meet with her very often, probably once a month.
But
One-on-one.
I understand you had meetings. Sometimes they were formally scheduled, and sometimes they were just sort of touch base meetings, right?
Our touch bases are scheduled.
In addition to meeting with Julie Jackson, you also meet with the clinical directors, right?
Yes.
Evan Schwartz would be one.
Dr. Schwartz and Linda Porter, I also met with monthly. Yes.
Okay. And you said that although you had a number of departments you were overseeing, if there were specific problems, you might spend more time with that department than others, right?
Yes.
Like if there were volume concerns or revenue concerns, those might draw your attention to a department more so than others.
So what I would say is that neuropsych had a volume issue when I came on is our budgeting period. In April, we get our or actually in May, we get all of our volumes for the first 6 months of our fiscal year. And then they start projecting out what the following budget cycle is going to look like. And so in that process, it was uncovered that volumes had decreased. So that was an area of concern, but I definitely would not have, even with that was their concern, but it was still not a priority compared to my other areas. And I don't mean to be disrespectful, but it wasn't that, it was their issue, but it wasn't the biggest issue on my plate.
Understood, but you're the director, right? And that's one of the departments you oversee, correct?
Correct.
And obviously, revenue to ProHealth Care is an important part of its functioning.
It is, although this department has never been revenue sustaining, it's revenue generating, but it doesn't cover their full costs. The organization sees the program as a value. So we do want to capture all of our billings, absolutely.
And that's why there would be meetings with coding, for example, right?
Exactly.
All right.
paid meeting.
Well, it may not always pay for itself. It's still nonetheless an important part of that program that as much as possible, it brings in revenue.
Yes.
All right. And there were volume concerns, which when you started in April of 2017, right?
Yes.
Now, you talked about the meeting with the clinic directors in your new role, correct?
Yes.
And that would be Evan Schwartz.
Yes.
Did Evan Schwartz ever indicate to you any problem with Pam McMurray?
At some point it must have come up. I don't recall it early on. Definitely not early on. We were
Okay.
focused on, we actually, the very first week I started, we had a recruitment meeting for a neuro psychologist out of Tennessee that we met with, and it was very fast paced. So we were focused on recruiting the pediatric neuropsychologists because they had been booking out 9 months.
You didn't learn of this peer review process until much later, correct?
Correct.
When you met with Ms. Jackson, Ms. Porter initially, they didn't indicate any tensions with Dr. McMurray and Evan Schwartz, right?
No.
Now, in addition to these meetings, you would also make rounds, as you described, right?
Yes.
In making the rounds, you actually go to the work site of the department you're supervising, correct?
Yes.
And you have a chance to see the interactions between the staff and sort of get an overall feel for things, correct?
I wouldn't say that, no.
Well,
Again, because they're all doing their own work and they're in their own offices, so generally they're not interacting. And I, again, because if they're seeing a patient, I may not even encounter them at all.
In making rounds, you never saw any negative interactions with Pam and other staff people?
I would say that I saw minimum interactions, period, between the staff interacting with each other because they're all in their own offices.
Excuse me, but the question is not the number of interactions you saw, but whether of the interactions you saw negative interactions. That's the question.
No, I did not.
You'd also attend staff meetings
Yes.
of neuropsychology, for example.
Yes.
So that would give you an opportunity to see the interactions between various members of neuropsychology, right?
Yes.
Now, I'd like to talk about the employee evaluation. You had done those before in your prior roles, correct?
Correct.
You did them when you worked for Milwaukee Health Services.
Yes.
And also, I think it's called Gerald Ignace, Ignace.
Yes.
Okay. If we could have get the number. I believe it's R10.
Okay.
I'd like to scroll down to the heading called Values, Respect, Fun. I think it's right near the end.
Okay, looks like that's the section.
Right, that's it. Do you see that, Ms. Zurcher?
I do, yes,
And for that, you put highly valued, right?
yes,
Now, I think you described there's outstanding, highly valued, and then something below that, right?
yes.
So it wasn't the top rating, but it's still nonetheless up there. You'd agree?
I agree. I also agree that it wouldn't be very relationship building for me to put valued for somebody who
Okay.
I don't know, barely know.
Ms. Zurcher, please answer the question that I asked.
Yes,
Okay.
sorry.
Now, in filling out the performance evaluation, you didn't leave any blank information because you lacked information.
Can you restate the question or rephrase
Sure.
it?
When you're filling out these evaluations, you didn't leave any portion of it blank because you lacked information, correct?
Objective form. Answer if you understand it.
Well, I think we can just look through the form. I don't think there's any space for there's no writing from you, correct?
Correct, yes.
You said earlier that Dr. Schwartz had offered you some information that you considered in completing this evaluation, right?
Yes,
And Dr. Schwartz wasn't limited to, say, clinical information in the information he communicated to you, right?
I suppose not, no.
Okay. He could have, for example, communicated any personal issues he was having with Dr. McMurray.
If it was something current that he was concerned about, I would hope that, you know, he would bring it to me.
Okay, but in fact, he didn't, right?
Performance evaluations are not a time for surprises or to bring up issues that haven't been previously discussed.
Okay, but you nonetheless have to fix on a rating, correct?
Yes, correct.
And that rating can be what you yourself observe, right?
Yes,
But it can also be information gathered by others.
correct.
And you had information you gathered from others in the way of Dr. Schwartz, right?
Yes,
And you use that in preparing not only the evaluation, but also the ratings, right?
some of the ratings, yes. Evan's information is looking at the areas that I can't assess, the clinical areas, how, you know, working with families and caregivers. So yes, that's what his is focused on.
But as you said earlier, he's not limited to clinical observations, correct?
Certainly not.
And he knew that you were somewhat new in that role, so presumably, if he thought he had information that would be helpful to you, he could have offered that as well.
If it was relevant, yes.
Yeah.
To the time period, yes.
And the time period goes back to 2000, correct?
October 1st, yes.
I'd like to talk a little bit about that August 7th occupational therapy meeting.
Yes.
All right. You were in attendance there.
Yes.
Did you say anything to Pam McMurray after that meeting?
I don't believe I did, no.
Did you email her or communicate with her in any way about what you had observed at that August 7th meeting?
No, I don't believe I did.
you did write something for Julie Jackson at her request, right?
Yes, following other examples of when Dr. McMurray was inappropriate, and it made clear to me that that was more significant than I had initially thought.
Okay. My question was, at the request of Julie Jackson, you did put something in writing. The answer to that is yes, correct?
Correct.
Right. But that wasn't until sometime after October, this not until October 27 of 2017, right?
Yes, after the
So
coding
you
meeting.
didn't write anything to Julie Jackson following that August 7 meeting until we get to October 27.
Yes, following the coding meeting.
Did you communicate with Evan Schwartz about that August 7 meeting after it happened?
I don't think so. I don't recall.
And he was clinical director, right?
Correct.
I think you described the occupational therapy meeting more as an overall feeling as opposed to what was said, right?
No, I believe I was clear in the email, the behaviors that I saw.
But not actually the conversations that occurred, right?
Objective forum, conversations between whom?
Pam McMurray and anyone at that meeting.
There may have been minutes from the meeting. I don't know, but those tend to be more general and just highlight what was any decisions that were made. So there wasn't like a recording of the discussions, or I didn't document the exact communication. No, I did not. I think that's what you're asking.
You said that there was eye rolling, right?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember what the conversation was or what had been said just prior to the eye rolling?
It had to do with the team sharing that they were going to do this Drive Able, and that they had this program that they were able to do this. This is kind of, in hindsight, was, I guess, bumping into neuropsych space or something, is the impression that I got. But it was when the team was sharing what they were able to do and how they were able to bill for these services.
That's what you generally remember, but you don't remember specific conversations, right?
No, I don't.
Now, this meeting with occupational therapy, that happened before your review of the annual review with Dr. McMurray, right?
2 days, yes.
Okay. Now, I understand you didn't make any changes to the annual review based on that, right?
Nope.
But,
No.
and when you met with Pam McMurray to go over the 2017 review, you didn't even mention this occupational therapy meeting, right?
I don't believe I did, no.
Even though you were the director, you'd agree that as far as gathering the information concerning Pam McMurray's termination, that was mostly done by Julie Jackson?
Yes.
Judge, if I could just have a couple minutes with Dr. McMurray. And I think we said we established yesterday that mute is probably a better way than breakout rooms.
I could try it one more time if you want.
I'm fine with mute.
Okay, so if you just want to mute and take like a 5-minute break or so.
Yeah. Then that way it doesn't depend on me to do anything elaborate.
All right, so we'll take a 5-minute break, come back about, well, let's just say 10:30, give you guys 8 minutes.
Sounds good.
All right. And Ms. Searcher, what we've been doing is just turning off our screens and then muting ourselves so that way, if you want to talk to anybody, we can't hear what's going on at your place then.
Okay, thank you.